Dionysus assembled his followers and marched to face the army of the Indian king Deriades. Responding, the Indian army organized itself. Warriors, clad in shining armor and elaborate weapons, stood in line under the Deriades banner. Minor river gods and other supernatural entities joined the cause, intent on defending their land against what they perceived as a divine invasion. While war was imminent, joy was infectious. There was constant celebration, reflecting the essence of the god himself. At night, Dionysus raised his tharsis and spoke to his followers with a voice that resounded like the wind among the trees. "We shall march with both faith and celebration. Every step we take is a dance, every stroke a celebration of life. Let them feel the sheer power of our transformation." As dawn broke, Dionysus's army was set to depart. Its ranks formed a melange of orderly chaos, a portrait of its own nature. The satyrs, nymphs, bacchants, and humans all followed their god in a march that was both a procession and a war declaration. The forests appeared to reply to his presence, growing more vigorously and spreading the fragrance of flowering vines wherever he went. By the time the two armies finally met, the air was charged with tension. The two Indian leaders, Astraeus and Silanius, were emboldened by the goddess Hera, who, moved by her hatred of Dionysus, was doing everything she could to defeat him. The bacchants spearheaded the charge, wielding thyrsi that sparkled with divine light. They bellowed in ecstasy, summoning the power of Dionysus as they moved towards the enemy. The satyrs came after them, carrying makeshift spears and tree-trunk shields. The clash was both immediate and brutal. Imbued with divine energy, the bacchants were relentless. Their seemingly innocuous thrusts pierced armor and flesh as effectively as sharp swords. Some called forth serpents that rose from the earth and coiled around their enemies, crushing them or prickling them with deadly venom. Others simply stared their opponents in the eye, lulling them into a paralyzing ecstasy before striking the fatal blow. The Indian general Astraeus, watching the chaos caused by the bacchants, cried out for his troops to resist and not allow their minds to be taken over by the madness of those women. Despite their numbers, the Indians withdrew to reorganize themselves along a riverbank. They had never faced an army like that before. Noticing the weak moment the enemy army was in, Dionysus chose to use his divine powers. He hoisted his thyrsus and turned the river waters, closest to where the Indians were, into a torrent of wine and honey. The sweet, intoxicating aroma rapidly spread through the opposing army. Enticed by the divine fragrance, the Indian warriors dropped their weapons and rushed to drink the concoction they had never tasted before. It was sweeter and more powerful than any other drink they knew, and brought about an immediate transformation. Some were laughing and dancing, entirely oblivious to the battle. Others fell into a profound sleep, their weapons slipping from their relaxed hands. Dionysus grinned as he witnessed the confusion. He rose his voice, proclaiming, "Behold the power of wine and celebration! Give in to joy, transformation, and ecstasy. There can be no triumph in resistance to divine truth." The battle raged on in pockets of resistance, but those who had been touched by Dionysus's blessings withdrew from the war. Thus the Dionysian army advanced relentlessly into Indian territory. At every turn, it became clearer that Dionysus's power lay not only in his strength, but in his ability to subvert and transform everything around him. Besieged by the merciless force of the god's army, the Indians turned for refuge to the sacred river Hydaspes. Urged on by Hera, the river god swelled into fury. Tall, violent waves surged like liquid waterfalls, engulfing combatants who dared to cross. Once a symbol of life, the river was transformed into a destroyer. Dionysus's followers used log rafts, boats, and even swimming horses to cross the raging river. Having crossed the river, Dionysus's army set foot firmly inside the Indian king's territory. Deriades would not allow such outrage and was bracing for the decisive battle to come. Dionysus's army advanced through Indian territory, meeting little resistance as it marched. The vast fields and dense forests echoed not with war cries, but with joyful songs and laughter carried by the wind. The locals, accustomed to the austerity of their leader's warrior traditions, watched in astonishment at the vibrant procession following the foreign god. Wherever they passed, Dionysus's army left a trail of life and abundance. Vines sprouted spontaneously along the roadsides, their ripe fruits glistening like ruby spheres under the Indian sun. The sweet aroma of wine mingled with the fragrance of tropical flowers, and the earth itself seemed to pulse with Dionysian energy. Nymphs danced barefoot, their crowns of ivy leaves entwined with wildflowers, while satyrs played flutes and drummed rhythms that made even the hardest hearts beat to the music's pulse. The villagers along the army's path lined the roadsides, peeking from behind trees and through the windows of their clay houses. Initially wary, they were gradually enchanted by the infectious joy of Dionysus's followers. Many joined the procession, drawn by the promise of celebration and freedom. Even those who kept their distance couldn't ignore the impact of the parade. On Olympus, the goddess Hera watched everything with great displeasure. To her, Dionysus represented intolerable chaos, an affront to the order established by the gods. Determined to thwart her stepson's plans, Hera summoned Ares, the god of war, to act on behalf of the Indians preparing for the decisive battle against Dionysus's army. Ares answered his mother's call, appearing in a surge of sparks and fury in the celestial hall. His eyes gleamed with the thirst for combat as he gripped his spear, already envisioning the havoc he could unleash.
"Mother, what command do you give me? Who dares defy the will of the gods?"
Hera, with a cold smile, pointed to the earth below, where Dionysus's procession was advancing.
"It is Dionysus, the one many praise, but who is nothing more than a usurper. He spreads revelry where there should be respect for tradition. Go, my son, and side with the Indians. Bring your fury to them, and together show that not even the boldest can oppose the power of Olympus."
Ares nodded, pleased with the chance to prove his supremacy on the battlefield once again. Mounted on his war chariot, pulled by flaming steeds, he descended from the skies and appeared before Deriades. The Indian king, already organizing his troops, felt invigorated by the presence of the god of war. With Ares' presence, the Indian armies gained new strength. Warriors aligned under Deriades' banners, and the sacred rivers seemed to flow more fiercely, as if the very environment responded to the call of war. Meanwhile, Dionysus and his followers continued their march, unaware that a clash of divine proportions was drawing near.